Guys, we've been talking a long time about what we thought we might see on Saturday, how things could end on Saturday. We had the OG Bloodline going up against Bloodline 2.0. And, Mark, I'll start with you. Were you surprised by the outcome of the men's WarGames match on Saturday night?
I was not. I was waiting to the last minute when they all stood with their backs turned to the entrance, waiting for something. It never came, but still, nonetheless, it was kind of what I expected without the big finish.
And, you know, Bully, Mark said expected. And I think a lot of fans were expecting something to happen. And Mark's 100% true. Now, I'm with you, Bully. It was my anniversary this weekend, so I didn't watch WarGames until Sunday. So when it was all said and done and you saw the OG Bloodline on that stage, and you're kind of just waiting, is something going to happen here? And I remember pausing my TV to see how much time was left in the show, and I saw it was like 12 seconds. I was like, no, this is how it's going to. Bully, do sometimes our expectations take us in a different direction? And maybe Saturday night was an example of that.
I know that your expectations definitely took you in a different direction. Allow me to reenact a phone call that took place last night at approximately 7 p.m.
Might I retort?
So the phone, I'm getting back, I'm driving back home, right? I'm getting ready to watch Survivor Series. I get a phone call from Dave. And I pick up the phone, and I'm always happy to hear from Dave, right? Hey, Dave, what's going on? Hi, Bully. Like, seriously, right off the bat. I was expecting him to tell me, like, oh, you know, something's wrong. I'm sick. Something happened to one of the pets. You know, I'm expecting bad news.
Violetta kicked me out.
Violetta kicked me out of the house. I wasn't eating the pierogies. I was expecting something, right?
Violetta ain't kicking me out of the house after Saturday, Mark, but I digress. Go ahead, Billy.
Oh, that's right. It was your anniversary.
Yeah.
It's a guaranteed night, right?
Yes, that's one of the guaranteed nights.
So like the tone of his voice, I'm like, Dave, what's wrong? Right, Dave? Am I lying?
Yeah,
Bully, I just watched Survivor Series. Okay, and I don't know. I was like, all right, Dave, hold on. Let me pull over. Come on in. Walk into my office, Dave. Lay down on my couch. Tell me what's wrong, Dave. And the word that you used was underwhelmed.
Yes, I was underwhelmed.
Why were you underwhelmed? You were underwhelmed because we, and I'm a part of this too, we built up Survivor Series bigger than what we got from Survivor Series.
Yeah, I think so. And listen, we're just used that men's WarGames match as an example because we'll talk about the other matches. And I know, Bully, you have a lot to say when it comes to the women's WarGames match. But I'm just going to focus on the men's WarGames match. Mark, you and I and Bully for weeks have been talking about the what ifs and what cans and what do we expect and what could possibly happen. And we talked about The Rock possibly coming back. We talked about Seth Rollins possibly getting involved in that match. We even had some callers call up about, hey, Brock Lesnar being a Paul Heyman guy. Maybe he shows his face on Saturday night. I was actually looking forward to something with Bloodline 2.0, maybe a dominant victory for them since the OG Bloodline this entire time wasn't on the same page. And what we got was, by the way, a great WarGames match for almost 45 minutes. Those guys beat the shit out of each other. Some incredible things happened in that match. So the match was great. I just thought something big was going to happen. We're 4 months away from WrestleMania. Survivor Series is one of the big four. At Bad Blood, we saw The Rock. So I think there were some high expectations. And Bully, as you said, a lot of that came from the conversations we had on this show, Mark. But I think that a lot of fans had high expectations about what's next with this story, and I don't know if they delivered that once that show was over. Mark, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is, Dave, I like teasings.
Yeah.
And, like in my style of wrestling, I was not going to move around a ton, but I was going to do stuff where stuff looked like this, and we're going to take that away. And that's what I wanted. I wanted Roman and Punk to be back-to-back fighting people off. And guys run Punk and Roman together, and they hit back-to-back, and they turn around and look at each other, but they both turn around at the same time, and wham, whack the other guys, they go down. And then Roman and Punk turn to each other like, don't fucking hit me, man. Like, they start to do the thing, and then all of a sudden, boom, the guys get them from behind. You go out of that one. They did a great job with Punk, with Punk saving Roman from the big splash. That's one. You do that last, but you got to set it up. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You got to set it up. There should have been a point where the Usos, both of them, in one of them in jeopardy. Where's the Tennessee corner spot? Let me move my brother out of the way. He hits the turnbuckle. He turns around, wham, he hits him. Now that guy hits him, and then he knocks the other guy down. So they all four down. Like, you got to do stuff to set up where you're going to end up. And that was the only thing that I looked at as a miss.
Well, to your point, though, Mark, and Bully, I want to get your take on this. It felt like almost like the tide turned in that match on Saturday night. And tell me if you agree or disagree. The focus was really OG Bloodline versus Bloodline 2.0, the Ubafala. Solo Sikoa having that Ubafala, and the whole who's the true head of the table, who's the true tribal chief. I kind of felt like what we saw on Friday with the sit down with Roman and Punk, and what we saw in the match on Saturday, it was more about Punk and Roman, and
then
can they coexist? Then the Ubafala and who's headed to.
Where was it? Why didn't somebody come and put it on Roman afterwards? That was another thing that it didn't piss me off, but I just thought it was a miss.
Well, I mean, the one thing is that I think at the end, I don't know if it was Corey Graves or that said about that the Ulafala, that Solo still has that Ulafala, and that he's still the head of the table. But Bully, the way that match ended, I mean, they beat the shit out of Solo Sikoa. So I don't know if fans are really interested about that right now. I think it's more about Roman and Punk.
When it comes to the Ulafala, if Roman is going to take it away from Solo, he's going to take it away from him in a one-on-one match where the Ulafala is at stake and the definitive head of the table is at stake, not when there's 4 other men on one side and 5 on the other. Yes, they are interweaving their main event storylines. I can definitely see how we would be looking after last Friday night on SmackDown into the Survivor Series, how this is becoming about Roman and Punk and Paul Heyman and The Favor. And Dave, we're already about a half an hour into the show, and we haven't thrown out the big question of today. So I'm going to just say it. What's The Favor? Busted Open Nation, what do you think is the favor that CM Punk is asking from Paul Heyman? Remember in Rocky 2, at the beginning of, in Rocky 3, at the beginning, when we see Rocky down and out after he had lost his championship and he's in the gym reminiscing about old times with Mickey, and he hears that voice, and it's Apollo Creed. And when Apollo finally convinces Rocky to train him and get that eye of the tiger back, he said, at the end of this, Stallion, you're going to owe me a favor. And Rocky says, what favor? They planted that seed at the beginning of Rocky 3, and they paid it off at the end of Rocky 3. And even at the end of Rocky 3, you don't know what the outcome is of the favor. They're planting that seed of a favor. Dave, I know it's been bothering you. What the hell can this favor possibly be?
And I think it's a great discussion because you're 100% right. Punk said to Heyman before the pay-per-view signed off, he said, when I need a favor, I'll ask. What could that favor be? What could Heyman possibly give CM Punk? Now, automatically you're going to be thinking about Roman Reigns. But what does Roman Reigns have that CM Punk wants? So Roman Reigns is no longer your undisputed WWE champion. So it can't be for a championship match. Hey, are they going to fight over Heyman? I mean, as of right now, I don't think Heyman's in Roman's corner. I mean, Roman tried to call Heyman and the line was disconnected. So it's not exactly like Roman is standing by Heyman's side.
Let's go a little farther with it. Roman goes to call Heyman. The number's been disconnected. All of a sudden, Heyman brings Punk into the Survivor Series match without checking with Roman. And who did Paul Heyman leave the cage with at WarGames?
It was Punk. He left with Punk.
There's something going on. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this one out.
And CM Punk made it clear in that sit-down on SmackDown that the only reason he was doing this was for Heyman. He has no love for Roman Reigns. He doesn't care what's going on with the bloodline or who's at the table. It's not his concern. He doesn't care. He was only getting involved because he wanted to be there for his friend, and his friend asked, which is Paul Heyman. So, again, like, what could the favor be? All right. Obviously, Heyman asked a favor to Punk. Punk was there. Punk made sure to remind Heyman that you owe me a favor. But what could that favor be? Because it really doesn't make it clear. But I will. I want to play some audio from after Survivor Series because the WWE had a press conference after Survivor Series. CM Punk did his whole gimmick now. I guess that's going to be his thing. Whenever he does a press conference, he's going to have cupcakes in front of him to kind of as a homage to what happened at All Out in Chicago 2 years ago. So the same thing. But a reporter asked, let's go back to Saturday night after Survivor Series. I could be reading into this, guys, but CM Punk wasn't happy in his last run with the WWE. One of the big reasons why is he didn't feel like he was treated as a top star. He was a world champion, but yet he was never in the main event. He was a world champion, though he was never in the main event at WrestleMania. You know, first he had the obstacle of John Cena because this was, you know, the John Cena era. And then you get past John Cena. Now there's Roman Reigns. Management was never behind CM Punk, even though the fans loved CM Punk. But yet the management was behind Roman Reigns. Bully, you even said here on this show before where Vince McMahon said, hey, this is the guy that's going to help us feed our families a decade from now. Roman was the guy. But the fans didn't want Roman. As a matter of fact, the WWE forced Roman down everyone's throat. Could CM Punk be referencing that? And the fact that, like, yeah, I was the guy, but management wasn't behind me. But management was squarely behind Roman Reigns. Maybe that's where the animosity starts between Roman and Punk. You were the chosen one. I was the rebel. I was the one that, you know, got my release notice the day of my wedding. And you were the guy that management was squarely behind. Maybe that's the story moving forward. Does it sound like a stretch? Maybe. I don't know.
It's something. It does sound like a stretch, but it also sounds like Punk would be whining, crying, bitching, and moaning. Look at what they did for you. They didn't do this for me. You were the chosen one. Why did they treat me the right? It could come across very wishy-washy. Okay? Mark Henry, why did they spend so much time with you? You weren't a wrestler. You didn't pay your dues on the indies. I did. How come I didn't get more than you did? Like, imagine me saying that to Mark. Right? Mark came in right out of the Olympics, gets a huge contract. Meanwhile, I've been wrestling in front of 5 people my entire life before I finally get a shot. It sounds wishy-washy. What is the one thing, and I don't, listen, I'm really trying to figure out what the favor is, and I'm sure the nation has a million opinions, and the phone lines are open. What is the one thing Punk never got in the WWE that Paul Heyman may be able to get him?
Could it be a main event at WrestleMania?
Ding, 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 circle gets the square. The main event spot at WrestleMania. That everybody kind of knows. The story that you brought forward, Dave, yes, there's no reason why that's a good hypothesis, because all we can do right now is guess. What did Rocky hand to Cody, and what's the favor that CM Punk wants from Paul Heyman? All of these giant question marks. So yeah, maybe Punk is disgruntled about the Roman treatment as opposed to his treatment from 10 years ago. But he's going to sound like a freaking crybaby. What can Paul Heyman grant? Go ahead, Mark. You were going to say something?
But that may be what they want, because we're in this whole thing about Roman being a babyface, and there's not going to be 2 baby faces. So you're going to have to make Punk the heel, and we all know that Punk is way better heel than he is a babyface. So for Punk to be able to come across as whiny, to come across as, I'm going to destroy everything that's not me. If it's not under my nose, I don't care about it. That's fine. I dig it. But more than anything, you're going to help me do it. And you're going to do it because I did you a favor, and I'm asking you to. Screw him. That's what you're going to do. I know you like him. I know you love him. But you're going to do what I ask, because that's the favor that
you're going to help me take down Roman Reigns.
Right.
Yeah, I need you to turn your back on Roman. I need you to definitively tell Roman no and side with me. Now, here's the other thing, too, about Roman, because I question Roman because Solo went in for the hug on SmackDown, said, let's do this together. We could rule the WWE together. During that Survivor Series WarGames match on Saturday, it was Roman that went in for the hug. When they all surrounded Solo, Roman's like, come on, your family, come in for the hug. And Solo wouldn't do it. He reminded everybody that he still had that Ulafala. So he reminded everybody of that. Also, it was Roman that shook CM Punk's hand. So in some small ways on Saturday, Roman did humble himself. CM Punk is never going to humble himself. CM Punk doesn't have it in his character or personality to ever admit when he was wrong or humble himself. So maybe that's what this is all centered around, especially when it comes to Paul Heyman.
Mark's suggestion is really, really strong, because he's asking Paul Heyman to do the one thing that Paul Heyman would never thought he'd be able to do: turn his back and stick the knife in Roman Reigns' back. It's major. It puts Paul back with the OG Heyman guy in CM Punk. Does Paul Heyman really need to be by Roman Reigns' side anymore? Probably not. And what better way to make Roman an even bigger babyface than for Paul Heyman to cut his throat?
I mean, listen, you have to think of it in that respect. From the face-off on SmackDown to when I need a favor, I'll ask, that ended the pay-per-view on Saturday, that's where our minds are going to go. Because I got to be honest with you guys, after what I saw at Survivor Series, I am not buying into Bloodline 2.0 anymore. I'm really not.
Listen, one of the things that we discussed is going into the pay-per-view, we thought Bloodline 2.0 needed to win.
Yes.
And what I saw last night was WWE 101. The baby faces went over. We got the beauty shot at the end. We got the out with the I don't know if the favor line actually aired on the pay-per-view or not.
It did.
The PLE. Yes, so we got that. We got
when they came down the stairs, when Punk came down the stairs, he went and got cheek to cheek with Paul and, hey, Paul, remember, when I asked, you're going to owe me a favor. He said it.
That's the stories that they wanted to tell. That was more important to them, to the WWE, their creative, their vision moving forward, than the Bloodline 2.0 going over, because they know that they can always get heat back on the Bloodline 2.0. Remember, Dave, remember, guys, the WWE is traditionally a babyface company. The babyfaces go over, and then we reheat the heels back up when it's necessary.
Yeah, I just think right now that Bloodline, at least for me, coming out of what I saw Saturday night, is taking a back seat. And maybe those rumors are true about The Rock not being a part of this year's WrestleMania. Maybe he's not. Maybe this Bloodline story is going to take a little bit of a back seat. I'm just throwing it out there because the next PLE is the Royal Rumble. That's the next PLE. So do we get a scenario where it's Roman and Punk in that ring together? Because they're both chasing a champion. Neither one has a strap around their waist. It's going to be very interesting. But again, to your point, what favor could Punk actually ask Paul Heyman? And what favor could Heyman actually grant for CM Punk? I mean, the one thing I never really thought that we would have is a Punk Roman program this close to WrestleMania, but that seems to be where it seems like it's going. The one thing I will say about this Bloodline story that's been going on for 3 years strong is it does throw curves at you. And you sometimes go in a different direction than you didn't see coming. I think this is an example of it. Because if we were talking about possible matches at WrestleMania, I don't think any of us would have thought it would be CM Punk and Roman Reigns. Not saying that that's going to happen, but that seems to be a story coming out of Survivor Series.
A great job by the WWE of swerving us. What fun is it to sit here and be able to read the writing on the wall and just know what's going to happen and say, oh, well, I called that and I called this. Big deal. I mean, sometimes we can do that because things are so obvious, but I like it when they go in different directions that we weren't able to figure out. I love the fact that we were like, oh, something is going to happen at Survivor Series. Something's going to happen at Survivor Series. And then nothing happened at Survivor Series. I don't mind that at all because the WWE did not plant any seeds along the way in their storytelling that told us or insinuated to us that there was going to be some big surprise or some big return. Guess who did that? We did.
Yeah.
We took it upon ourselves to blow this. We worked ourselves into a shoot, brother. So who's to blame here? We are. So I don't mind. Did I ever think we were going to get Punk and Roman heading into WrestleMania? No. But coming out of Survivor Series, I'm 1,000% more invested in the story of Punk and Roman, Paul Heyman and the favor than I am with Roman and Solo Sikoa and the Ula Fala.
I agree. I mean, after what I saw, I agree. And that's not something I saw. So I think it's a little bit, like you said, more of a surprise. And Mark said something very interesting. If we were to get, who knows, we may not get it, but if we were to get Roman versus Punk, I guess it's kind of the same discussion if we would have gotten Punk or Seth Rollins. Who are the fans going to be behind? Are they going to be behind Roman or are they going to be behind Punk? Because, Mark, you said about Punk being more of a heel and he works better as a heel. I don't think the fans care. The fans love CM Punk no matter what.
I was the guy that I wanted to see Seth Rollins show up and do something.
Yes.
I was the guy that wanted to see The Rock show up and go, well, so you're the tribal chief. Well, the tribal chief is beneath who I am, which is the high chief. And there be some task thrown your way. Make The Rock the taskmaster. You want to go to WrestleMania? You either gonna do what I tell you, or you're gonna do what I tell you. And there's always a way. It's just that, you know, that was us, like Bullet said. That was us interjecting things into it that was not, they never told us story. That was just us.
And one of the beautiful things about this story, or the possible story that they're telling, is with Punk, Roman, and Paul, if you just analyze Mark's story about how the favor is going to be that Punk is going to need Heyman to turn on Roman, I'll give the answer away. Paul is going to stab Roman in the back. What historical figure is most known for stabbing somebody in the back?
Who?
Come on, think of your Roman history. Brutus. Brutus stabbed Caesar in the back.
The barber?
I'm thinking wrestling, and he went to history.
Oh, sorry, guys. I actually went to ancient Roman
Bullet went to world history on our ass, Dave.
Every once in a while, I show how smart I am. Smart,
Yeah.
I tell you. So
The barber.
Brutus
The barber?
That was actually really funny when now I think about it. I'm trying to get all serious and shit. And you're like, the barber. No, Brutus. Who killed Caesar? Brutus. His best friend stabbed him in the back. That's what they're setting up here. To Mark's idea, to Mark's point, the moment of truth at the apex of Roman and Punk, whatever moment that could be, the Rumble. It comes down to Roman and Punk, and Paul Heyman stabs Roman in the back. I'm just throwing out a possible scenario.
Listen, there's a lot of possibilities here because once again, the MVP, and I thought the MVP of the match on Saturday night and continues to be, is Jacob Fatu.
Sure.
Like, there's going to be a point where, like, you know, we're talking about the losses piling up for Bloodline 2.0 where Jacob Fatu may have something to say to Solo Sikoa.
Dave, I was waiting on the face-offs. You know, the potential, you know, everybody's rumbling around, everybody gets bumped down, and then the last two guys standing, Jacob Fatu and Roman, again, like we had a few months ago. And then you have Jacob Fatu, same thing with Big J Uso. And then our main event, Jey Uso. And then you can have him bump around and have a face-off with Punk. Remember we talked about this. Like all the potential people to work singles against Jacob. Why not tease them?
I think they kind of did in a way on Saturday, to be honest with you, Mark. I really do, because to me, the exclamation point was the end of that WarGames match. Every member of the Bloodline OG took a shot at Solo Sikoa. To me, that's the end of a sentence. That's an exclamation point at the end of
Solo,
a sentence
not
right
Jacob.
there. Yeah, Solo Sikoa. That everybody took a shot at Solo at the end of that match. So maybe this is where the Bloodline 2.0 is moving on from Solo Sikoa. I don't know.
Card subject to change.
Yes.
As things go on every week, look at what happened, obviously, last year with The Rock, Cody, WrestleMania, blah, blah, blah. Things can change. Maybe, remember I told you about demanding the spotlight and commanding the spotlight. Jacob might be commanding so much of the spotlight that they're like, you know what? We might need to pivot. We might need to switch. We might need to move away from Solo right now and get into Jacob. Who knows? Because I can tell you this. The MVPs of the men's WarGames match were Jacob Fatu, Bronson Reed, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns. Punk and Reigns, for the moments that they created and the story they told without doing a damn thing. Just by sitting there at either looking at one another or not looking at each other at all. Obviously, Bronson Reed going off the top of the cage. And Solo Sikoa, and Jacob Fatu for just doing what Jacob is doing every single week and stealing the show. Those were the standouts. And I think it is very telling, or could be very telling, that the fact that every member of the OG bloodline got a shot in on Solo Sikoa. So that Jacob could turn around and go, hey man, they beat your ass down. Maybe you shouldn't be wearing that thing around your neck.